So after somewhere around a 14-hour travel day, we ended up in our first destination, which is Budapest. And just to remind folks, this is the first stop on a four-stop trip headed through four different countries, up then through Vienna, Prague, and Berlin. So what do you do when you end up on a trip and you've developed some sort of a respiratory issue and you don't feel so good and your hotel dates and your travel arrangements are already set in stone? Well, get your ass out of bed and you go see some stuff. And on our first day, it was a doozy walking from the ancient city which preceded Budapest, the Roman city of Aquincum, down through Obuda being a translation for Old Buda essentially. And that's what you see in the top left here. This is the arena in Obuda, and it is just now a park where people kind of come to hang out. And you can see a fairly modern city next to ancient Roman ruins. And I'm always interested in what cities decide to do with their ancient heritage, these few cities that have this great Roman heritage. And to your lower right, you can see where there was a walk under a sort of large road. They've actually left portions of the excavation that happened when they dug it out so that people can appreciate the city that's underneath the city they live in. From Obuda, we walked down through one of the islands, and this was Margaret Island, which has some of the few remaining medieval ruins. And what we've got on the left here is a UNESCO water tower that's much more modern. What we have on the right is a particular detail from one of those medieval ruins, which was the convent where Princess Margaret, for whom the island is named, spent her entire life. And what I thought was interesting here is there was some grading to make sure you didn't fall off a second story, and people had left these locks, and these locks were inscribed or etched with the names of couples and then locked onto that grating. And I thought, well, that's much better than graffiti at least. And there's something kind of oddly touching about it as well. Following our walk on the island, we continued our walk, this time on the Buda side of the Danube, mainly so we could get this fantastic view of this building, which is the Parliament building of Budapest, built in a neo-Gothic style. It was meant to look like the Parliament building in the UK, and it was built without a budget, which I think is great. And by without a budget, I mean there wasn't a cap on how much it could cost, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. We were on our way to take a river cruise highlighting the architecture of Budapest by night. And here's a detail from the Parliament building. You can really see the Gothic nature of these flamboyant spires and these buttresses right in here. Absolutely gorgeous. The next day was much easier on the feet. All in all, we'd gone somewhere between 6 and 8 miles, and I was not feeling super sharp. So I was glad that the Fine Arts Museum is what was on the docket. And in the upper picture here, you can see that we got a little Hungarian army marching band welcome as they were marching across the square in some sort of a routine before we entered the building. On the bottom, you can see one of the amazing spots that we saw. I just thought this was a really great way to showcase a Northern Renaissance altarpiece. This is a Hans Memling altarpiece. You can see this is the middle pieces. These two fold in, and a mirror was placed in the back so that you can actually really see what the cover looked like from when the piece is shut. Later that day, we did something that one can really only do in Budapest, which is go to the Széchenyi Baths. And here you can see in a beautiful neoclassical architectural setting, you've got some of the natural springs of Budapest made available to people. We've got lane swimmers. This bath was somewhere just a little over body temperature, and then you've got a cooler bath off in the distance. It was a really interesting experience because, in the U.S., we often have a lot of body issues and usually only see young people hanging out at a pool. And it was nice to see a full range of ages and body types hanging out together fairly unself consciously. I thought it was a really great experience. So whenever you go to a place, I think it's a really good idea to try the food. And by the way, Hungarian food is marvelous. Lots of paprika and red pepper, very flavorful, handmade dumpling-like noodles, just very, very tasty. Um, but I kept seeing signs for this beer called Soproni, and I thought, well, it'd be a really good idea to try, what appeared to be one of the most popular beers. And I went to order a regular Soproni, but then we found that there was a Soproni Dark that was named Soproni Demon, and I just couldn't resist. And boy, was I rewarded for that kind of behavior. The train ride was really, really nice, very uneventful, and it was easy to get to our hotel. So that meant that we actually had a little bit of time in our first night in Austria, and there was just one thing that I wanted to see with only about an hour and a half to go, and that was at the Natural History Museum. The Natural History Museum of Austria contains the Venus of Willendorf. And the Venus of Willendorf is just one of those things that if you get the chance, I think you've got to go see. So here is Sarah and I, really tired and probably not looking our finest, with one of the most important ancient pieces, an amazing Paleolithic figurine. And I took this close up because a lot of books will tell you that she doesn't have hands or feet. And yes, she doesn't have feet. At least they're no longer in existence. But if you look here closely, you can actually see fingers on the hands from these tiny arms that are up on top of her breasts. Um, it was an absolutely amazing piece of work. I think she's just one of those pieces that you probably just have to see in person to really get an idea of how fantastic this early piece of art is. And the rest of the Natural History Museum was just fantastic as well. Lots of fossils and meteorites. And I thought you guys would appreciate this one right here. That is a selfie of Sarah and I in heat vision as a snake would see us. Notice that the camera that I used to take the picture doesn't show up because there's no heat involved. So it's probably going to be a few days, and when I make my next blog post, it will be about what we did in Vienna.